Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Super-Fanta-Fi. This being a show where I talk about TV shows of the supernatural, fantasy, and/or science fictional genre. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of Manifest. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. Well, you got many different angles to kind of attack this episode from, so let's start off with Zeke and Michaela's side of things, which is really interesting. The fact of the matter is, Michaela gets this calling about, bring him back. And it's like, okay, so she walks into a bank and she sees Zeke, and it's like, oh, was Zeke the one? But it's like, no, Zeke got the same calling, which is like, very interesting that you both got the exact same calling. I find that fascinating. So once again, it's kind of like destiny. Cal had said they needed to be together, and it's seems like destiny as well as this callings, whatever this higher power is, has kind of made that same decision as well. So I thought that's kind of fascinating. But obviously, the bank suddenly gets robbed, and it seems like they're trying to, figure out, because obviously the way this person is operating, it's like he's an amateur, but then Michaela's like, if there's money here, just take it and kind of go, you'll get in less trouble that way. But he's like, money's not as important to him, he needs to get to the vault. Zeke kind of tackles him, but kind of gets pistol whipped, and the mask comes off. But Michaela recognizes him because Ben has, done research on everyone, so she recognizes him. It's like, you're from 828. His name is Logan. Interestingly enough, kind of interesting casting stuff. Logan, the actor who plays Logan, was in an episode of Daredevil in season 1. Which, interestingly enough, I brought this up last season. Obviously, the actor who plays Vance, he was also in Daredevil, so there's that connection. But it goes even a little deeper when you actually want to break it down. Obviously, the actor who plays Jarrett was in Jessica Jones. Now, not the same thing, but still in the same wheelhouse of Marvel Netflix. So I just think that's just all interesting how that's all tied together. So I just thought it was interesting casting news. But then it turns out, he's here because he's desperate to get something out of the box, out of the vault. It's something he says will save his life because he talks about the death date. Now, none of the other passengers that, Michaela or Ben have come across have known about the death date. He's the first one of the other passengers, at least that they're aware of, to have a calling about the death date. And this is all for him to be like, oh, I got to try and save myself. Now, Zeke and Michaela are looking at this as a means of if he potentially has something, his calling is leading him here, that must mean it must be some kind of cure, some way to kind of beat this death day situation. So we might want to inadvertently help him, which obviously Zeke feels complicated by it because it's all right, so now you're so desperate to save me because Zeke only has a certain amount of time. If he only has 8 months left, but he's anytime I try to make contact with you, you kind of brush me off. He's so am I just another number person that needs to be saved? And Michaela's no, it's not like that, because obviously it's not. But it's just she's scared just because because she ended up having that interesting conversation with Evie's mom earlier this episode, where it's just kind of she admits that she kind of has a thing for Zeke, but obviously just coming out of this complicated situation with Jared, it's they both walked away breaking each other's heart. But for her, it's considering he has such a limited amount of time, and she's just worried about what this means in the end. But Evie's mom says he has a good heart. I forgot what the exact wording was because Michaela repeats it later on, but having a good heart is a good starting point, is a good thing. So it's kind of if he's a good person, then allow yourself this happiness, no matter how short it might be. Embrace that time that you have, So, because once again, Michaela obviously cares about him. So obviously they're trying to maneuver all this to try and get the other, hostages out. Jarrett shows up because he hears that Michaela is here, and obviously he wants to help out with this situation, which he calls Ben, which Ben had an interesting run-in with TJ. I wonder, did I refer to him as JT last episode? I think I said TJ, but I could have gotten it wrong. But nevertheless, because TJ now just had a calling that's, it's about the Gramercy. It's some high-profile athletics, members-only club type of situation, who Olive kind of helps him figure this whole situation out. Interesting enough, TJ and Olive have a connection because they met 5 years ago before Flight 828, because he actually recommended her a book and everything. And I was and then she initially wasn't wanting to get on the flight with her bro, her aunt, her dad, but then she saw that TJ was, and it's she had a crush on him because he had recommended her the book A Wrinkle in Time and everything. And I was oh, they had this adorable moment, because he's hey, she's oh, she's I'm 10 and a half, and he's oh, hi, 10 and a half, I'm TJ. It was this adorable moment between them. I'm she's crushing on phone him. She's even trying to get on the same flight to get, but it's like, oh, he's giving the last seat on the flight to his mom. But I guess his mom, well, because his mom never was able to join anyway. So I guess, well, because remember, because his mom ended up not going. So I guess something just kind of fell through in that department, because obviously when he comes back, his mom is already gone and everything. But sadly enough, but it is interesting how fate works like that. And Olive, because obviously TJ is like, do I know you? You look kind of familiar. And she's like, no. Because like, I think at first she's afraid to admit that she knows exactly who TJ is, because it would mean like, yeah, I remember this crush I had on you for like 5 years ago that we met that one time, and I had a super crush on you. So, but even I was like, huh, because the moment I saw that it was Olive as a kid, I was like, that's interesting. Well, you're basically going to be the same age now. You're in the same age group now. So it's like, because it's been 5 years, he hasn't aged, but you have. So I'm like, huh. How serendipitous, I guess, you know? But nevertheless, TJ and Ben follow this, and they like, all right, they narrow it down, but it's like Ben finds out from Jared about like the bank robbery. It's like, okay, we got to go. But then lo and behold, it turns out everything's connecting. I'm like, ooh, I love it when like all the pieces come together, because it turns out TJ's calling is actually connected to Michaela and Zeke's calling, because Logan, the calling that TJ got leads to Logan and his brother, because they were part of the same club or whatever, and it actually leads into his brother Frank, which we kind of understand why Logan's doing all that he's doing now, because Logan basically explains that his brother, like everything their dad left for him, stuff that was supposed to go to Logan, his brother wouldn't give to him, because his brother isn't an Xer, but he doesn't believe, like, you know, he's like, you're not my brother, you're some fake version or something, you're something that's not human, you're something pretending to be my brother, along with everyone on 828, they died. Because obviously that's been the thing of like trying to figure out who and what they are. I feel like I vaguely remember there being a similar angle of thought process that Frank has in season 1, but maybe I'm remembering wrong. But because obviously a lot of people are like, once again, people look at some of the stuff, especially like the pilot with the 828 situation last season, looking at him as like, oh, like, look how dangerous they can be. So that obviously gives certain people reservations. So like I said, it's so interesting, like the perspectives. There's people who just kind of treat them like normal people. There's people like the believers who wholeheartedly believe in them being something special, being a miracle. There's the Xers being on the most extreme other end of this, being like, get rid of them, they're terrible, blah, blah, blah. And then Frank kind of falls on a similar fringe on that lane of, you know, thought process. So I think that's kind of interesting. But for, you know, that's what broke Logan, because it's like, this is my brother. He doesn't believe he doesn't say, he believes I don't exist. And, you know, and he saw, despite seeing how distraught I was about all this, my brother didn't care. So, and Michaela doesn't say anything, but I think for Michaela, it's a thing of like, whoa, she's going through this situation with a sibling of her own. Granted, their situation's different. Ben was along with her. But I think, you know, it does make you wonder what Ben's perspective would be like if Michaela, if he hadn't been up there with Kim and Cal, like if it was just Michaela, or if it just, I feel like if it was Cal, he definitely would give it all he's got, but it's because of him being a part of this too, that he's able to separate himself and not think of this whole, well, he tries to be rational about it because he has to ground it in some shape or form, but because he's a part of it. And I like I said, Michaela never brings anything up, but hearing that discussion is still got to be like, because the fact is that he's going through this alone. She's fortunate enough not only to have, you know, Zeke by her side through all this, she also has her brother, and, you know, so she's not going at this alone, which obviously, you know, Logan was. I mean, especially seeing like his tombstone over and over again, knowing that you're going to die, literally carrying that by yourself, and you tell your brother and he thinks you're crazy, and also doesn't just think you're crazy, he doesn't even think you're you. That can mess you up psychologically. So obviously, you know, situation, Michaela's kind of keeping everything at bay, so they go to the vault, but they can't get it open because the bank dude has the one key, but Frank has the other, and it took Ben bringing up the fact that your brother isn't crazy, the death date, I've seen it too, which obviously this is TJ's first time hearing about it. He's like, wait, what death date? It's like, I didn't want you to find out like this, TJ, but it's like, because obviously he didn't want to panic all the other passengers about this, so obviously it's a well-kept secret amongst only a few. Like, really, currently the only ones who know are Zeke, Cal, Ben, Michaela, now Adrian, but we'll get to that soon enough. So it turns into this thing of like, you know, trying to convince him because it's like, wait, your death date is the same date to the vault. It's 6/2/24, June 2nd, 2024. Interesting how that kind of worked out like that. But obviously Frank is so desperate to get inside of the vault. Obviously he fired off a couple shots. One of the shots ricocheted, shot home dude in the leg, the bank dude in the leg. Zeke took him outside but went back inside because he wasn't going to leave Michaela alone, which obviously him and Jarrett meet eyes. That's a whole thing. We'll get to soon enough as well. But yeah, because it's like, because even Logan was like, how do I know you actually come back? He's like, as long as she's in here, I'm not going to leave her alone. I'm going to come back, you know? So, you know, that's super sweet. So when that's all said and done, though, Frank does show up and he does apologize, and they do open the vault, the safety deposit box, and it turns out like inside is a watch, and it has like, I couldn't really tell what it was, but later on it's explained it's a bullet, because basically it was something their grandfather had. He stormed Normandy. Everyone in his group ended up dying except for him. The bullet that would have killed him got stopped by the pocket watch. It got passed out to their dad, who had helped somehow stop a brain aneurysm. So for him, it's like, this is a good luck thing in the sense that it saves lives. And he was so desperate for a solution that he believed, like, maybe if I hold this, it saved my grandfather, it saved my father, so maybe it could save me too. But for him, he can't obviously take it to jail, so he wanted to give it to Michaela because he's like, maybe it can save you as well as maybe help other passengers as well. So, but at the end of the day, like, Michaela also thinks that maybe the whole point of this too was to bring these two back together. It's like, the fact of the matter is they have such a limited amount of time, but at the very least not going through this alone like he has been. So despite the circumstances, his brother's back in his life fully and being like, oh, I recognize this is you, you know, Frank recognizing that is his brother Logan, which obviously this speaks volumes to Zeke and Michaela, hence why they got this particular calling, interestingly enough. But then they flip it over and there's a peacock on it, which obviously peacock was a calling from last season, and now that's connected. So like, okay, so obviously there's a bigger puzzle here, and obviously for Ben it's like, all right, so if this is a case, that means that, you know, we can solve this, we will solve this, you know, because obviously for Ben, he was, you know, kind of short on hope. The fact of the matter is, because Grace caught him making a recording to Olive being like, you know, in case she wants for her to watch it on her wedding day or something like that. And Grace was like, delete it. And he was like, no. She's like, because she was like, you're giving up hope. He's like, I'm not giving up, but I got to, you know, prepare just in case. But she was like, you will find a way around this. But for him, it's like at this point, they hadn't had a calling in like a month. And nothing was really kind of pointing them in the direction of this Death Day stuff. But now they do have one, and it kind of reinvigorated it for Ben of like, yes, it's slow but surely we are piecing this together. These are pieces to a puzzle. It's all going to work out in some shape or form, you know? So Ben is hopeful again. And the reason why I find this all fascinating, because obviously this also ties into like... because Olive earlier in the episode, because Adrian during the, you know, believers group was talking about like, oh, we can go on for decades. The fact of the matter is, like, there's been miracles that have happened before, but people have been reluctant to believe it. It's like, but the fact is, a miracle like 828 was able to happen. That means miracles can happen tomorrow as well. You just have to believe. And once again, last season made it seem like Adrian was so full of BS that he just enjoyed the following and stuff like that. It almost makes me want to take a second. I don't know. Maybe when Ben crosses paths with Adrian, kind of finds out what Olive's up to, that maybe that's going to change things. But it kind of puts me to almost want to believe that Adrian actually does kind of believe what started off as BS actually kind of gave him hope now. That's what I'm thinking, but it can always change. But Olive ends up telling him about the death day. I mean, your dad would have gone to him, but it's like, well, he's working down the list, but also he probably knew he couldn't trust Adrian because Adrian's doing his own thing. And for Adrian, he could most likely try and take advantage of this information and kind of manipulate people with it. But obviously, Olive, you know, talks to TJ about this whole situation because it's like, well, your dad kind of gives his all when it comes to these callings, right? And it's like, so if it comes down to this, you think he can solve the death day? And for Olive, she has a perspective of my dad, because even TJ's like, well, your dad kind of, because like she's like, my dad gets very obsessed with things. Obviously, my brother's cancer and now the callings. It's like, well, it kind of makes him a good mathematician and stuff like that. But because of that, like, rather than coming at this death date from a place of hope, he's coming at it from a place of fear, like, oh, I got to so desperately find a cure and stuff like that. Which I think that now has been flipped a little bit, but maybe you could still make the argument is coming from a place of fear. But I think it's because he didn't know if there was any answers, but now he knows there is. He's coming from, I think it is more so coming from a place of hope. Oh, we will solve this. We will find a way around this. I will be around to, see my daughter get married and everything, I'll be, and long after that, so I think stuff like that. But for her, it's like, for TJ, it's like, how can you be so hopeful? And Olive wants to show him, and she brings him to the believers thing. And I think for TJ, it gives him something to believe in. Now, I'm curious to see what this, like I said, it seems positive. And like I said, it seemed like Adrian might kind of like I said, might start off like BS, manipulative thing. But I think now that it's grown, I think even he's starting to believe in, especially now that he has the death date himself. He, now knows about it. He's like, the fact of the matter is we were saved before, we can be saved again. But even that, like I said, there's a part of me that's still just kind of like, I know he's going to be kind of all like, he's going to go all con artist and manipulate people with that. We'll see. But the interesting thing that also ties into all of this is also like the Michaela and Jarrett situation. Because if it wasn't for Jarrett, Ben wouldn't have been there. So Michaela's like, thank you. He's like, because she's like, the fact of the matter is you had my back when you didn't have to. So it's like, oh, they're good. But then Michaela leaves with Zeke, and you see the look on Jarrett's face, because I think there's a part of Jarrett that's hoping like this could be a step closer to them repairing their relationship. But it seems like, oh no, like she's leaving with Zeke. But we see that, hey, he's kind of moving past Michaela and is, him and the lady who works at the bar. So it's like, okay, so, it's like kind of finally letting yourself kind of move on, be willing to take those steps. Obviously, we know there's extras in there. And my question was like, so is he going to use this as an opportunity closer to extras? Like him and Michaela might not be together anymore, and they might have this complicated thing because of the whole Zeke thing, but it's like, that's still so what he cares about, so he might try to infiltrate that group is kind of what I'm wondering. Or I hope, like I said, I hope he doesn't go full-blown evil about it and goes full extra. I hope it is just a thing that he infiltrates a group, but we'll see. But obviously the situation brought Zeke and Michaela together because it is just a thing of like, they don't have a lot of time, so until a cure is found, they are kind of against the clock, so enjoy whatever happiness they can while they have the opportunity. So it's a beautiful element to it in that regard. And while all of that's going on, there's the situation with Sanvi, who's still doing her research, because she ended up bringing up the fact is because in a petri dish she was able to get rid of the 828 marker. So it's like, okay, that's interesting. So she thinks about getting rid of that from the DNA, then maybe, just maybe, that could be their way of getting rid of the death date. But who knows? Maybe that 828 marker, I'm sure Sanvi's done her own research, but maybe slowly over time, that slowly deteriorates. And maybe actually removing the 828 marker might actually speed up the death day or something like that, make you die immediately. That's me jumping to a conclusion. Like I said, Sanvi's probably done enough research, but the dude that died last episode, that's kind of, not last episode, but last season, who's connected to all this, who was brought back after, as well, that dude, it makes me wonder if that ever came, like I said, I'm probably reading too much into it. I'm probably thinking about it too much, but it's interesting. But I love that, Vance is trying to prepare her for trying to give the Major a false lead. But, and because obviously she keeps fidgeting with her necklace, and he's like, the fact of the matter is you're going to mess up because of this. Like, she's going to, because obviously, the Major is very well equipped, to kind of pick up on signs like that. So it's like, if you're fidgety, she's going to know what's up. Like, roll an apple in your hand or something to kind of keep you, like, more focused and not on edge. And it's like, obviously, it's like, if you still got issues with Ben, talk to him about it. And he's like, this isn't junior high. It's been weeks. But she's like, he lied to me. But obviously, she doesn't want to go down that route because she felt betrayed by Ben. So obviously, there's that. But nevertheless, she's talking to the Major. She's eating an apple, trying to be all confident and everything. So it's like, okay, it seems like they might be stringing her along. Sadly, what was his name? Dr. Davis or whatever, or Dr. Matthews, whatever his name was, was in there, stealing Samvi's, fake samples again, because I'm sure the Major never ended up telling him the truth, but he's in there stealing those samples. Lo and behold, who comes in? Troy gets injected with something. I was like, no, don't tell me Troy ended up dying. That would suck, because he's a good guy, Troy. He just wanted to help out Samvi. He had a huge crush on her, and he just wanted to kind of, help her out and everything, because he thought, oh, maybe we could, he wanted an excuse to spend more time with her. I'm like, hopefully he just got knocked out, but I'm like, oh, he super got killed, didn't he? I was like, oh, that sucks. And even Sami's going to feel worse about it because, on top of all this, it turns out, oh no, her research got stolen because we see the lights on in her closet where her research was, and it's all gone. I'm like, were they spying on you? Were there cameras or recording devices in your room or something like that? But it turns out it's because the Major saw through her deceit. Maybe they did have stuff implanted ahead of time, but it's like they get back to the office, it's already cleared out, and on the fire mantle or whatever, there's an apple being like, oh, I got you. And, Vance is like, it's not your fault. The fact of the matter is, we were David, she was the Goliath. But obviously, Samvi feels bad because it's like, now, like, all her research got stolen because Vance was telling her, well, at least he had made it clear, like, you can't be doing any of your research until we make sure that the Major is dealt with. But Samvi kept up with her research for the past month, and now, because of that, all the information she had about getting rid of the 828 as well as spreading it to other people that mark her, the Major has access to all of that research now, and they kind of inadvertently done all the heavy lifting for her research while Samvi has. So that's got to make her feel even worse about the situation. So it's definitely going to be interesting to see where all this ends up taking us going forward into the next episode. But really, that's all I want to talk about. Until the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.